covered the whole room, turned on some music, and started going to town. He said, we can't take this whole body out in one piece. It's too heavy. Started cutting him up in pieces. They butchered him like a hog. Took his legs, took his arms, took his head. All right, so let me break this down to you, street style, carnal. So first, let me break down who the big homie on the yarda is. Mohammed bin Salman. Out here in the States, he's known as MBS. That's the acronym that's been given to the gentleman. He is the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. He actually became the crown prince at a very young age. I think it was 30-something, where there was people that were 50-something that were supposed to be next in line. But what this vato did is he started whacking them. He started going around, getting his goons. He started killing some of his own family members. And eventually, they folded, homie. They folded, and he became the big homie on the yard of Saudi Arabia. And now, Jamal Khashoggi, the vato who got booked, he was a reporter. And he was starting to make waves in Saudi Arabia and speak against the government. While he was living there, it wasn't so blatantly out there because he would have got killed. He left Saudi Arabia because of the pressures that were going on in his country. Eventually, he got a job for the Washington Post, which most people will know is a big newspaper out here in the United States. Well, when he got that job, he started exposing. He started letting people know what was really going on in Saudi Arabia. People kind of already knew, but this was an actual vato from that yard that came off that yard and started telling you, this guy's murdering people, this guy's silencing people. And they started pressing up on Khashoggi, but Khashoggi was out of the country. There wasn't much they could do. So they were planning on assassinating the vato, on booking him, homie, on taking him out, giving him the green light. That way you guys understand, right? So how they caught him slipping was like this. In 2018, Khashoggi had a new fiance, was planning on getting married. He was living in Turkey at the time. He went to the Turkish government, asked for a marriage license. They said, we can't give you one. You need to get cleared by your government, which was Saudi Arabia. So he said, fine, I'll go to the embassy. Most countries have embassies that pretty much when you walk to that embassy, that's that country, right? And he tells them, hey, I want to get married. I need such and such paperwork. And I'm sure they could have gave it to him right there and then, but they said, oh, well, the person who does that job isn't here this week. He'll be back next week. If you can come back at this date, we'll take care of it. He's still thinking, all right, no problem. I'll see you guys next week. Well, what he didn't know is as soon as he left, there's a phone call, and all this stuff is documented. There was either bugs in the office or they had all their phones tapped because that's what a lot of countries do. They spy on one another, right? So there was a direct phone call as soon as he left. They said, hey, Khashoggi just came in here. He wants a marriage license. They instructed that guy to go back to Saudi Arabia, which he did. He flew back to Saudi Arabia. Within a week's time, a day before Khashoggi was coming, a day or two before he was coming, 15 people from Saudi Arabia flew to Turkey. This was the hit squad, homie. They're planning, and they did murder this guy. As Khashoggi was walking back into the embassy, there's a recording where you can hear them talking amongst one another, and it says, has a sacrificial animal arrived? You hear somebody else say, yeah, he's here. Khashoggi is seen walking into the embassy, and he never walked out again. What the assassins didn't know was that Khashoggi's fiance had come with him. There is video of him giving her his phones, saying his goodbyes. This is at 1 p.m. their time. Then he walks into the embassy. She waited out there till midnight. He never came out. She started making phone calls. They were saying that he had left. They were making excuses. And then the pressure started coming on. The government started getting involved. Turkey started getting involved. A few days later, some more people came There were supposed to be specialists to come to the embassy, but what it was scientists that Saudi Arabia had brought in there to get rid of all the blood evidence. I'm sure they scanned the whole rooms to make sure there wasn't anything in there, right? This story took a few weeks to finally break. And when it did break, it was something straight out of the movies, maybe worse. The recordings started being leaked to the press. You can hear Khashoggi as he walks in. They greet him. They start telling him, hey, how you doing? All right, good. Hey, are you ever going back to Saudi Arabia? Khashoggi says, yeah, hopefully one day I will be able to go back, knowing that if he went back, he would be most likely killed. And then they start pressing up on him. Hey, homie. I'm sure they didn't say homie, but you know what I mean. They said, hey, homie, did you know you got a warrant out in Saudi Arabia? He says, no, I don't. So, yeah, you do. And then you start hearing the scuffle. You start hearing the scuffle. You hear him put his face down, cover his face. There's a whole, desmadre going on. To that, hold him. They gave him a shot. They gave him a sedative. And then you hear the guy still hold his face. They were suffocating him. They ended up putting a plastic bag over his head, suffocated him. One of the guys that came, remember, it was about 15 of them, right? It was a whole squad. One of them was a pathologist. The pathologist put him on a table. They had plastic everywhere. They covered the whole room, turned on some music, and started going to town. He said, we can't take this whole body out in one piece. It's too heavy. Started cutting him up in pieces. They butchered him like a hog. Took his legs, took his arms, took his head. They ended up wrapping everything up in plastic and taking him out in about 15 suitcases in pieces, which they had purchased, which is video of them purchasing the suitcases. They took him out in a van. Khashoggi was never seen again. One of the guys, the 15 guys that came in, was a body double they used to try to fool people and believing Khashoggi had left. The cameras inside the embassy were not working. The ones outside, but not even at the embassy, by hotels, did. They were saying, look, this is Khashoggi right here. They had a man who looked like Khashoggi. He had his face mask, so you couldn't really tell, but the body type, the hair, a little bit of the beard that you could see, yeah, it looked like Khashoggi. But they made one crucial mistake. Khashoggi walked in with some dress shoes, which that's what he was wearing. The other gentleman that was his body double walked in with some tennis shoes. His shoe size would not fit Khashoggi's, or vice versa. So when he dressed up, he kept his tennis shoes on. And you can clearly see that's not Khashoggi's shoes. That was not Khashoggi. They ended up following all the cameras and figured out who it was. It was some engineer they hired to play the double. As all this was unfolding, the Trump administration said they would get down to the bottom of it, that, if it was something, that they would put sanctions, that they wouldn't just sit there and let the government do this.
What's it going to take to get some answers?
Well, we're looking at it very, very seriously. I don't like it at all. Now, you don't have American citizens, but that in this case doesn't matter. I don't like it. I don't like it with respect to reporters. It's a terrible, terrible precedent.
It's not our country. It's in Turkey, and it's not a citizen, as I understand it. But a thing like that shouldn't happen. I don't like the concept of stopping an investment of $110 billion into the United States. Because you know what they're going to do? They're going to take that money and spend it in Russia or China or someplace else.
As the debates were going on in 2020, Biden was quoted in saying that if he was president, the Saudis would not get away with this, that they're tyrants, that they're animals, that they're pretty much murderers. And he's talking about MBS.
The leader of Saudi Arabia directed the murder of U.S.-based journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The State Department also says the Saudi government is responsible for executing nonviolent offenders and for torture. President Trump has not punished senior Saudi leaders. Would you?
Yes, and I said it at the time. Khashoggi was, in fact, murdered and dismembered, and I believe in the order of the Crown Prince. And I would make it very clear, we were not going to, in fact, sell more weapons to them. We were going to, in fact, make them pay the price and make them, in fact, the pariah that they are. There's very little social redeeming value in the present government in Saudi Arabia.
And that he would not tolerate this. Fast forward into 2022.
Bump of two fists. President Biden today gave media-savvy Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman the viral moment he's been seeking. The president was reluctant to meet with MBS, as he's known, having denounced him publicly after U.S. intelligence confirmed the Saudi leader ordered the murder of one of his critics, Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. Mr. Biden said he raised the killing at the start of his meetings with MBS, where the fist-bumping continued with other top U.S. officials.
Here is Joe Biden giving him a fist bump to MBS. Joe Biden folded, just like every other politician folded, just like the Trump administration folded, just like many countries folded. And why did they fold? Because they got the dope, homie. They got the dope that we all want, that we all need. I'm not talking about drugs. I'm talking about oil. Oil makes the planes up in the sky fly, the trucks that bring your food, the train, the ships, the cars, you name it. Oil runs the world. So if you got the dope and you're one of the countries who has most of that dope, you've got power. You've got power to go into somebody else's country, be in your embassy, have somebody come into your embassy, chop them up, get rid of them, and act like nothing's happened. And even when they do catch you, you say, well, those guys were working on their own. But as people know, Saudi Arabia, the prince is the one who runs the country. The prince is the vato who made the lista to do the pegada, homie. He was the one that gave the green light. And now, fast forward to 2022, the fiance is trying to sue the prince, but the Biden administration is blocking that, saying he has immunity.
A major turnaround for the Biden administration, now saying that Saudi Arabia's crown prince should be shielded from lawsuits over his role in the killing of a U.S.-based journalist. Now, as a candidate, Biden denounced Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman over the killings. This all happening through a motion filed by the U.S. in a federal lawsuit brought about by the fiance of that killed journalist, Jamal Khashoggi. Saudi officials killed him in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in 2018.
When he was running for office, it was all tough talk that he would, crack down on the prince and how he murdered this gentleman. But now, no way. And I say these stories and bring you examples like this to show you how politics really works. Politicians are not your friends. Politicians will let you get chopped up and killed if it means they get oil, if it means they get what they want. And this is whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Republican, it doesn't matter. What matters to them is the money. What matters to them is the oil. What matters to them is the power, homie. And this is what real politics look like.